Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Moon Harvest, Amish Earther, Naughty Thumbnails, Mitch Kennedy, Original D Rose, Rod, The Name's Burley, Twad Wassel, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, Flat Earth Travolta, J Mel's 24, Unimento, M Iron 26, Endless Flat Earth Sage, Golden McKinnon, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Mel B. Styles, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W., Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Nealands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, Tina Baker, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
That other song he has, Ashes for Ashes. You know, Major Tom's a junkie. Oh, it's all about getting high. It has nothing to do with space.
Did you like my live show thumbnail? I don't normally go to the effort of making a thumbnail before the live show, I've got to be honest, but do you like it? Oh, he's gone. Any of you lot in Discord actually seen Master B? No, probably not.
I like it.
Negative.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Okay, good. See if I can pretty up my Skype presentation a little bit. Talk amongst yourselves.
Get a new pawn, check engine light though.
Yeah, same here, Neil. What's the name of that sensor again, hun? There's a lambda sensor in the back of our TT, Neil, and it's a cheap sensor that typically would just be screwed out and replaced for, I don't know, $200 or $300, including labour and the parts. So it's just a sensor just after the catalytic converter, but it's seized on. So as a consequence, this relatively cheap sensor is going to cost about, in your money, about $800 to $900 for them to remove the entire manifold, which means stripping the front of the car because it's all tightly packed into this little car. It's about 6 hours labour, and they can't even do it. So we're like, okay, when it was a couple of £100, we're like, yeah, we can scrap that together. Now it's £600, and they can't even do it till the new year. So I had to go to my mate and say, you've got an Audi, where are you currently going? Because I'm only going to the garage I am now because he recommended it, and he jumps around from garage to garage. So he's like, this guy. So I phoned him up this morning. Really nice gentleman. Seemed a bit older. And he's like, yeah, I can book you in within the week, next Wednesday to be precise. I'm here from 6:30 a.m. I'm like, marvellous. Because I'm normally dragged out of bed pretty early for other kids. So yeah, I've got to get that sorted too. But we've been driving around with the engine light on for a little while, and we just go in, we get it reset, and they're like, check to see if it does actually come back on, because often these sensors throw faults when there isn't actually anything wrong. But in this case, it's come on 3 times, and we've gone back 3 times, and now they can't book us in because they're down in the garage. They haven't got a man. They're a man down. So it's like, oh, well, we don't wait 4 weeks to fix it, because it's like driving with the choke out. Did you ever used to drive an old car that had a choke? Neil. Clearly not. Anybody in Discord ever drive a car that had a choke? Oh no, so I'm talking about clearly.
I haven't driven a carbureted vehicle since 1990.
Okay. Well, but you are familiar with what a choke does.
Yeah, I had a pickup truck that had a choke problem. It wouldn't run right when the choke was running.
Right. Well, most cars, you pull the choke out, you run it, gets warm, put it back in again, right? Normal process.
Yeah.
But if you don't, the car will run like garbage because it's too rich and it doesn't like it. Well, in the case, well, that's the only way I can describe how my car currently runs, or our car currently runs. Just does it, the temperature gauge doesn't ever get up to temperature, and it's always running rich, and you can smell the fuel, and it's sluggish. My wife's like, so what? Just drive it, because we've got one of the classes that's absolutely miles away, just by coincidence, and all on country roads with all sorts of stops and starts. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. When I did a relatively fast journey for my younger daughter, similar distance but on fast roads, you get to a roundabout, right, and you'd be in, I don't know, second gear, and you'd come off the clutch and go, you've changed down because you're slowing down for the roundabout. Then you go to pull away, and it's like you can hear the turbo whistling, and nothing's bleeding happening, and you're like, go, because there's a lorry on the roundabout coming towards you. Now, obviously, if you can pull away, no issue. But if you can't, suddenly the lorry's bearing down on you. I'm like, it's terrifying. I don't want to do it. I want to get it fixed. Because it's just in those 1 or 2 moments that you suddenly don't get the performance that you're expecting, as sad as that sounds, that you're in danger because you can't pull away. But it's just like the garage are like, oh, don't worry about it. It's not dangerous. They mean to the car's engine to run it like that. I'm like, yeah, it may not knacker the engine, just running it rich. It's just like a fail-safe system, to keep it from blowing up, which is fine until you want it to do something it doesn't, and then it's dangerous. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it is.
Yeah, long-term running an engine rich will dilute your oil and foul your plugs.
Yeah, it just carbonates the whole thing, which you don't want.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so, you don't want to run it like that for a prolonged period. There we go. That's just one of the foibles of owning an old car. What's your engine like, Neil?
What's that?
What's your engine like?
I don't know. It's funny because if I pull into a gas station, this started happening once the check engine light came on. My brother says, have I been filling it up without shutting it off? Yes. I always put the gas. I never shut the car off when I fill up.
Okay.
So I started abiding by that, shutting the car down. But the first time I put gas in the car, I come back in to start it, and it's freaking hesitating. Just like, and then it kicks over. And that's what it does every time now.
Okay.
It takes about 2 seconds, and then it starts. So
Okay.
I don't know what's going on with it.
There's a term for that. There's a term for that running.
You didn't get it.
Oh, he can't hear me. Clearly, he's got a crap connection and can't hear me.
I was about to say, it sounds like a fuel. Go ahead, Nathan.
Nathan.
I was just going to say there's a term for it when you put fuel in the car while it's running. It's called hot fueling.
Oh, I do that all the time.
It's dangerous.
Well,
He thinks he's an F1 car.
When I call them up, they tell me, well, you didn't get the max protection because I bought it from CarMax. I'm like, what the hell's the max protection? They said, well, it covers you. It's either 90 days or 4,000 miles. Well, guess what? I put 10,000 miles on the car already. So now I'm left out in the cold with my freaking...
You've put 10,000 miles on it. I mean, I'm not sizing the car. But that's 10,000 miles of wear, tear, and general use. That's a lot of miles.
Okay, all right. A lot of miles. In 2 months?
Yeah.
And I brought the car in for a few things. First of all, it's a number of things. The battery. All of a sudden, the first week I had it, it didn't start. the battery was no good. I brought it back. They changed it. Second time I brought it back, it was squeaking. Every time I pull into a drive-through, you hear squeak. Bring it back. They
You're breaking up, Neil. You're breaking up. Breaking up, Neil.
Oh yeah, entropy's hell. You know, you got wear parts you got to constantly replace on a car.
Yeah.
It sounds like it might be your fuel filter though.
Did you say you put 10,000 miles on the car in 2 months?
Easy.
Yeah.
I used to put 10,000 miles on my
That's
car.
correct.
My car every 3 weeks when I was a rep.
That's a lot of miles, dude. 10,000 miles?
I do that in a month.
I was going to say, I
Usually.
used to do
Yeah,
150,000 miles a
not
year.
lot I don't know why. I don't know why people think that's a lot of miles. When you drive, that's it. I heard Arwen the other day talking on the show saying he's the best driver. He never got into an accident. And then he goes, wow, it's been a while since I've driven. Yeah, because you don't drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Average.
5,000
Admittedly,
miles a month is just 166 miles a day.
yeah, exactly. When my office was 150 miles away and I'd be regularly visiting it throughout the month, then you can imagine you pile on the miles real easy. But for your average UK traveller in a car, the average person here does 10,000 miles or less in a year because they just haven't got anywhere to go. You know, they're driving around, but they're not driving hundreds or thousands of miles each year, just pootling around.
Oh yeah, when I lived in the city, there was the same thing. When you live in New York, maybe you'll do 10,000 miles in a year. Maybe.
The last job I had was 1,200 miles one way.
Yeah, it'd be like me doing a show in Germany or something. You load up the car and then you do several hundred miles in a stint, and you're driving all day. But some people just can't reconcile that. They're like, "What? You don't mean you don't stop every 2 hours for a coffee?" And you're like, "Yeah, you do if you don't ever want to get there."
Stop.
Stop. That was it.
Has an espresso.
Stopping.
Listen, my brother has an espresso machine hooked up in his work truck. It's actually pretty cool.
Oh,
You
yeah?
just turn around, hit the button, Espresso City.
What makes any journey take longer? Is it driving slowly? Not necessarily.
Stops.
It's stopping. Stopping makes any journey cease. It's not, you're not progressing at all. So stopping, because people will be like belting down the motorway doing hundreds of miles an hour, then they'll pull over and have a coffee and go to the loo, and then get back in and do hundreds and hundreds. It's like, what are you doing? Go to the toilet before you leave. Make sure you're not thirsty. Maybe put a drink in the car that you can sip on, and then just keep a steady speed constantly towards your destination until you get there. And you'll get there pretty quickly, or quicker than most people who aren't doing that. And then if you happen to go on.
Sorry. I got my family, they gotta hold that shit in. I stop for gas, and when I stop for gas, take care of your business. If you don't, you're out of luck, buddy.
Yeah, you stop for gas, and when I used to be a rep, used to stop for gas, and I'd make it strategic. It's like, no, I'm not going to use that service station because you've got to come off, go on a roundabout, go on another roundabout, pull in the service station, navigate the car park, then you get to the petrol. That's going to take 3 minutes. I want a petrol station that you pull off, and there's the pump, and it's pay at pump.
Me too.
And then you get on the road again, and you want to get the petrol in the car to the brim within 3 minutes, and then be on your way again, and you're like, yeah, the sat nav hasn't even changed its time.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, mucking around. Or when you're deceived, it looks like you can get to the petrol station really quickly. I'm going to go for that one. You pull off, and then there's the roundabouts and the car park. You're like, it deceived me. It looks so close to the road.
Yeah, my wife is like, we passed 4 gas stations. I'm like, but they're not the ones that I could just pull right in and pull right out and get back on.
Exactly.
So they don't count.
Exactly. That's it. Time is precious when you're doing a journey. All effort should be concerned with is staying moving. You know, that's it.
Yeah, but then you run into the people who don't know how to use a station properly. Because my closest gas station is the pumps are offset, so one side of the pumps has where you could queue up for the pumps, and the other one is like very small and tiny between the building and the pumps. That's where you exit. No, all these people like to go in through the exit instead of where you could queue up in a large parking lot.
Sounds like the wrong petrol station to me.
Well, it's just the way the building was. They couldn't adjust where the pumps were too much, because behind the building where you go in to pay is the car wash. So they were limited as to what they could do.
Yeah, but I mean, are you in the
it's just
sticks?
like,
Have you got no other petrol stations to choose from?
well, that's the one that gives me the best points on the points card.
Ah, you see. The ulterior motive. The points is what's important. You've got to get your Tesco points. I see. See, that is very low priority when I'm on a journey.
How about the ones that pull up and they don't what do you say? Pull up, they get their gas and they leave their car at the pump and they go in the freaking gas station. I don't like those people.
Well, they're normal people, Neil. We're abnormal. We're in a hurry. We've got stuff to do. most people aren't like that.
Well,
if they have got
those
stuff
people
to do,
don't realize that
you're not being considerate to the next man, though.
this is the problem. Most people are killing. Most people are killing time. They're dawdling, and they might have somewhere to be, but they're in no hurry to be there. Now, if I've got anywhere to be, I'm in a hurry to be there. If you know what I mean. Because I don't want to be journeying. I want to be there. If I've got somewhere to be, I want to be at that place. The quicker I'm at that place, the quicker I'll be home again. If you know what I mean. In the case of when I was out as a rep, that was all that concerned. The quicker I can get to this customer, either sell them something, deal with a service issue, do a courtesy visit, whatever it is I'm there for, the quicker I can get back in the car and go home. Other people didn't see it that way. Certainly reps. Be like, you'd be there and another rep would be next to you. And you'd be like, all right, where do you live? And they'd tell you. And you'd be like, all right, you're heading back after this. And you'd be like, no, I'm staying in a hotel. Like, so you're telling me for this hour long, 2 hour long, whatever it may be, visit, you're prepared to stay in a hotel for that? Well, I don't want to be in a hurry. Like, well, I'm not in a hurry. I just set off earlier to do the very long journey. And now I'm here, same time as you. And when we're finished, it's probably exactly the same time in a couple of hours, I'll get back in the car and drive home again. And it might be dark when I get home, but I'll be at home. What? You know, we live on a tiny island. Nowhere's that far. I can do Scotland in a day. I can do the top of Scotland and back. And people used to do it back when there was less police presence. Try and do the whole length of the country. Well, I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to do the whole length of the island in a day. But to the Midlands on a nice motorway network, it was easily doable. You know, I'd come back from Scotland. It's like, what, avoid staying in a hotel? I'll just drive. I've got a fast car. Why not?
Freaking police. You believe I got a ticket on Thanksgiving Day?
I got a ticket too.
Rat fast.
Yeah, you and I live in parallel lives in motoring. So, yeah, on the way back from some trip for the kids, I forget what it was, we're on a motorway and I've got the car's all camera detected up. I had it transferred before giving back the Repmobile, and it all got put in my wife's car. So there's all laser detectors and stuff in it, and it tells you where all the cameras are. But what it can't account for, there's two things it can't account for. One is a police car behind you with a camera that clocks you. The other is if you've got temporary roadworks that they put up temporary cameras on. Now, back when I was a rep, I used to pay a subscription for it to update that like every 6 minutes. Obviously, I don't pay for that anymore. So that is one of the two things that it now doesn't account for. And sod's law, I got on a motorway and I'm doing like 56 on a motorway is 70 speed limit. And it's a 50 roadworks, but there's no roadworks, there's just cones. So you're like, okay, well, I won't do 70. I did 56. You slow right down, but it's not slowed down enough for their speed limit camera that's hidden somewhere. So I got done. My wife had to send it back saying it's not me that's driving because it's a car registered to her. So 3 weeks later, I've got either a choice of going on a road awareness course or 3 points. But oh, great, I'll have the road awareness course and the smaller fine.
Yeah, well, this guy, what happened with me was I'm driving and I'm coming to now. It's 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. Now I'm coming to a light and I see the arrow turning yellow, but I got caught in between. Now it's either I jam the freaking brakes and stop and everything goes flying. I got coffee and everything in the car, or I glide through the yellow as it's turning red. And as I'm doing it, I see a cop like right behind the guy at the light. So he's the second car. And I said, he's got to understand that I was going too fast to stop. But I wasn't breaking the speed limit. 45, I was doing about 48 through the light. He freaking pulled me over, man. And he gave me a ticket. Now, be respectful right up until you give me that ticket. You give me a ticket, I got no freaking respect for you. He's handing me the ticket and talking. I'm shutting the window. He goes, you don't want to hear? I said, I don't give a shit. You gave me a freaking ticket on Thanksgiving. Have a nice fucking day.
No swearing, please, Neil.
Sorry, and I got to go to court on Christmas Eve. I'm going to beat this ticket, I'm telling you right now. I've beaten a few of them with my gift to gab. I haven't tried it out down south yet. I may just get hit just because I'm a Yankee. But we'll see. And I'm going to have my day in court. I'm going to go there and I'm going to tell them, what is more safe, for me to freaking stop short or for me to glide through? Has anybody in this courtroom not got caught in between lights? Raise your hand if you have.
Hey,
We'll
Neil, just
see what
to
happens.
be prepared, you should watch My Cousin Vinny before you go to court.
I was going
I'm
to say the
prepared.
same thing. It's just easier to impeach the officer's testimony.
You know what bothers me? Their light did not turn green yet. You know darn well their light didn't turn green. And no matter what I told this guy, and I haven't had an incident in over 6 years. You know what that'll do to your insurance?
I
A ticket.
suggest
Yeah.
I suggest you go try to handle it before your court date, Neil. Go try to talk to a assistant DA.
No, they don't give me the option for that. He gives me a ticket that's ripped, right? I can't even read the instructions
I
of what I'm to
understand.
do. You either plead guilty or you go to court.
You
I
can send in a
understand that,
motion
Neil.
to
They
dismiss.
don't give you the option. It's not an option that they write out. The cop doesn't even know about it. But it's what a responsible person would do, is go handle their business as soon as it becomes their business. And the sooner
Who do I
you
get
do
in
that,
touch with? I don't even know who to get in touch with.
the assistant district attorney's office will guide you, or the district attorney's office will guide you to an ADA that's over traffic court.
Got it. I'm going to do that today.
Yeah,
Right.
send him a
And
motion to dismiss.
Listen, here's the
This
deal.
is not legal
If you're
advice.
driving reckless and you're blowing lights, but if it's in driving, you're in certain situations. And a police officer's got to know how to weigh them out. Now, he said, as soon as he pulled me over, he seen I was doing DoorDash. He seen I had orders in the car. I said, officer, if I would have stopped, everything would have went flying forward. I thought it was more safe if I just glide through it. And I knew your light's not turning green. I seen you there. Is it more disrespectful for me to just jam on the brakes and stop, and then I'll be in the middle of the freaking highway? He didn't see it that way. He's seen it as his quota to write me a ticket. Rick was supposed to let me go.
Don't you know the number one rule about police officers? Don't talk to police officers.
No, I've talked to many of them and talked my way right out of things, even speeding.
Okay.
Speaking of that, I got 3 of them right behind me now, sheriffs. They're bulletproof.
Then stop talking to
Invest
us.
on. No, they're parked. I mean, I just did a pickup, so
Neil, when
got
they
their
walk up
food,
to you,
baby, that was it.
when they walk up to your car and say papers, you say scissors real quick and you're free to go.
Yeah. Always ask a police officer if they are a public servant. They love that question.
I kind of did say that to him. I said, aren't you here to serve me? How are you serving me by giving me a ticket on Thanksgiving?
The wrong question.
You saw what happened.
Yeah, but if you ask them if they're a public servant, they become silent.
Well, it's not a malformed question, but the wrong question nonetheless.
Anyway, what's going on with flat earth debate? Got everybody losing their mind.
I think for the last
What's different about that?
same as ever for me, Neil. For the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been tuning this computer like it was new, because it essentially is.
Well, it's a lot better now, correct?
Not really.
And that does suck. My son was saying something to me. I wanted to ask you. That's what he was saying. He was saying something about stars being seen in front of Mount Everest. I told him I'd ask you about it today, because he's on about how come you could see straight up for thousands of miles, but you can't see another country from America or whatever the claim is. And we know why, but according to them, it's Earth curve, right?
What? Hold on. You can see straight up 90 degrees to 90 degrees to the plane of reference, huh?
Oh, I didn't think of that. That's right. Always winds up back at flat. You need a flat Earth for that anyway.
Yeah. It's like how the question as it comes off for them is, well, yeah, given that we're using a flat Earth, using this flat Earth, how does this work on this flat Earth? And it's such a mind numbing question that people, I guess, have just kind of gotten numb to it.
Yeah, currently what I'm dealing with, Neil, is an audio issue. And I just cannot remember the settings that I've had set up for like 5 or 6 years. So upon putting a new install of Windows on, what I'm actually getting is encoder issues, like when I first got the computer, because I couldn't remember then how to do it, and now I still can't. So eventually I figured that problem. Well, to all intents and purposes, the computer seems pretty stable, but I'm messing up the audio encoder settings. So it keeps giving me drop frames. I keep trying. Fortunately, I know how to test before we go live, so I can continue recording. That's what I'm dealing with, if you ask. And you did.
Hey, Nate.
Yes.
Do you ever, when you uninstall a program, do you clean your registry?
Yeah. If the whole thing was completely wiped and a new hard drive was put on, then new Windows was put on it. So I've started from there.
Well,
I love that.
If the actual registry keys aren't cleaned or deleted, then they're still there with an old program.
No, there are no old
background.
programs. That's the point. So the computer had a new hard drive, then new Windows, and then it was given to me. So I then spent a week putting all the software on. Well, now all the software's
Gotcha.
on, everything's working, but I can't for the life of me remember what bitrate I used, what target usage for the encoder I used when I was using the secondary encoder. So right now, for the last 10 minutes, I've been on and off streaming, but without actually starting the live stream. And what I'm doing is I'm testing settings to see which one will stop dropping frames. Now, there's a minimum, which I'm about to reach. And I just don't know, is that my internet? I don't think so. I think it's me just not knowing how to set these encoder settings correctly. But there we go. That's what I'm fiddling with. Eventually, I'll get there.
I think it's really interesting that Neil asked a question that 3 years ago would have sparked a 15-minute conversation. And Nathan has become so at ease with this topic that he just he started talking about his computer.
What did he ask? Sorry.
He ignored it and started talking about his computer.
What did you say? Something like, what's going on in Flat Earth? And I just ignored the Flat Earth bit, right?
No, the part about...
I proceeded with a question. Yeah, I proceeded with a question that my son had about stars in front of Mount Everest or something, or seen at Mount Everest, which I don't know what he's talking about there, but he also claims that you're not able to see from New York to Paris, but you're able to see things thousands of miles away up in the air.
Okay.
You know,
Sphere.
And?
I pointed it out to him that, you know, straight up, so 90 degrees to the plane of reference. Awesome. What's your question now, son?
Oh, dear.
I guess you didn't hear all that, or it would have been a longer conversation. My bad. I just thought you were like kind of reached where I'm at, where there's not really much to discuss about it anymore, is there?
Hey guys, I got a question related to this. Who came up with the phrase "How long is a string"? Where does that come from? When it comes to for heights, because we're talking about heights of the celestial bodies, and there's that old saying, but I don't know where it comes from. It had to be some guy, some mathematician or something.
Are you talking about where they would tie knots in the string and use that to mark degrees?
Perhaps, dude.
Yeah, that preceded the astrolabe.
I thought it had something to do with the heights of the object or the heights of the celestial body. How long is a string? Like, it's impossible to calculate the height, or not calculate it,
Yeah.
but like.
Yeah, it's because in this example, elevation angle is a special use of the word elevation. You're talking about an angle from the plane of reference. So, you know, holding that string with the knots in it can give you an angle from the horizon.
Cool. Thanks, John.
Yes, sir. I
Well, I
wanted to go
can't
into that earth.
fathom why mariners would use knotted string.
Yeah, is that what he was talking about?
Not. It's better that I not talk about this. I don't know.
Oh, I like the pun.
I try to be punny. I'm not as quick as some of the other guys, but yeah.
I think it's my internet. No matter what I seem to do with this encoder, I'm dropping frames before I'm even starting.
Have you tried kicking it?
Yeah, 3-foot drop works. You tried to lower your bit rate?
Yeah. I've periodically...
You're still using the 60 frames per second?
Okay, thank you for all the hints. I just don't need them. I just need to concentrate. But thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Kick that thing. That'll do it. I always worked on my Nintendo Entertainment System. You just bang it on the top a few times and it come right in.
Well, my question to myself is, I'm fiddling around with encoder settings, and no matter how low I go, it's still doing it. So I'm thinking, is there something wrong with my internet? Do I need to turn it off and on again, so to speak? The router, which takes about 10 minutes, and it's 2 minutes before we're supposed to start the live stream. So I'm going to give it one last go at the lowest settings I can possibly set it before it'll start giving me a warning that it's too low to stream with. Let's just try that.
Well, there's an old saying, if you want your computer to go faster, drop it off a cliff.
Well, just see how this goes. We're connected to YouTube. I pay an absolute fortune for my internet. This is so irritating. It's reached that time now. I've got to run what you brung, so to speak. So,
Hello.
hello, Owen. Right, we're going to suck it and see. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's go.
Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good to have you. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Welcome. Glad we're streaming. Had lots of technical issues before we started. Could be internet related, could be encoder related. We just don't know. Hopefully this stream will be successful. We shall see. I'm going to do a couple of housekeeping questions, but you can probably tell from the thumbnail, which I did put a little bit of effort into before even starting the live stream, which I don't typically do, because there's not normally a theme to any of the shows. You don't know who's going to join. You don't know what's going to come up. Housekeeping is about the only consistent thing that we have. But that aside, I did actually want to have a theme to today's show, because it's show number 2001. So if you can't figure out what we're going to have a theme with, then maybe you shouldn't be watching. I don't know. Either way, we're going to do a bit of housekeeping first. So let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Nope.
There is none, Nathan. Gas law and any description of gas, it requires a volume. But the pressure, it has a force against the walls of its container. So if we're going to measure that volume or the pressure, we'll need a container.
What about any evidence of the distance to the sun?
It's way too misty for that today.
How would you measure it?
I need to know what it is first, if you're asking me specifically. I have no idea how I would go about measuring a distance to that thing that we call the sun, as I don't know what it is to go about measuring it.
Well, you can see something in the distance and not know what it is, but still measure a distance to it with an angle.
If I know the distance to it, or I know the height of it, if I don't know what it is, I can infer that I don't know the height. So you're inferring that I do know the distance and I can measure the angle, right?
You're gonna have to be
I'm talking about.
to size anything up about it.
One more time, Owen.
You're gonna have to be able to reach it to be sure about anything about it.
No, he's juxtaposing that with
Size or
something.
distance.
You're not listening. He's not doing that. He's juxtaposing that with something that we can measure with an angle. Just listen up. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, but you could measure it
Right.
with an angle to an apparent location, no?
We're not talking about second time's a charm. Just listen to what
Yeah,
John.
3 Arwinian units.
Just listen to what John's saying. Go ahead, John.
Right. I'm talking about terrestrial measurements, right? Like you see something in the distance, and you can measure an angle to it. You can establish a ratio of height based on that angle off a flat plane, of course. But you can't do that with the sun.
Did you all follow along that time? He's talking about the ability to measure with an angle something that you have a known distance to, or if you know the height of it, and in a terrestrial sense, you can do that. That's no problem. You don't need to know what something is, as long as you've got a value. Well, in the case of the sun, we don't have any of those things. Hence, you need Huygens to assume the size of Venus, for example, to extrapolate out the scales given to him by Kepler in order to assert that we've got a distance to the sun. Well, that's useless.
Well, there is angle consistency that you can rely on, at least, right?
No, not Huygens. No, Kepler. Maybe you can take the angles off a flat plane, and you can put them into a description of orbital motion. Well, yes, you can do that with just the angles. You don't need anything else. You don't need to assert the distances either. It just gives you scale. But that's just Kepler. I'm talking about Huygens to get a distance to the sun.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, this
Okay.
actual distance to the sun, it's whatever they want it to be, and that's why there's been this distance to the sun inflation, over the centuries.
We've got one more housekeeping question, unless anybody thinks something's relevant to the general topic that we're going to be discussing today, which is any scientific evidence of gravity.
Yes, it
Well,
contains
what
the
is
gas pressure on Earth. Sorry.
Well, if depends if we are working on the really is level or not.
Well, Arwin isn't. He just said, well, we've got the gas pressure on Earth. Yes, we have. That's not in any way
Hold on.
an assertion of a proof of gravity, though, unless you beg the question, which you absolutely will. That's why you've said it.
What is gravity? What the scientific evidence of what? What the hell is gravity?
It's the force that's manifested by the
Gravity
non-force
is
of
not a
gravity.
force.
Not listening, Neil. Go ahead, Arwin.
It's the force manifested by the non-force of gravity that is capable of keeping the gas pressure stuck to a ball versus a giant outer space. Of course, the ball is presupposed, by the way.
As is the outer space.
Naturally.
Lots of assumed
A
circumstances
non-force
in an
force.
assumed area with assumed ignorance of laws of thermodynamics. We've got gas go down, go boom, boom. Thank you, Arwin. You happy, Neil? That's what you were talking about when we talk about gravity. I'm happy to accept that as an answer. Anyway, any scientific
Doesn't
evidence?
cut
So why those three questions? Distance to the sun, gas pressure without a container, and gravity. Why would those be the questions, given that the show number's 2001?
2001
Space
Odyssey?
oddity.
Space Oddity, did you say?
Yeah.
I did put Space is Odd as the title of today's show. So
I was going with
David
9/11. I
Bowie.
was way off.
you were going with 9/11. Did you not see the thumbnail?
I see it.
Yeah, no, not because of the exactly because of yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay, we can all quit the music. I'll get a copyright strike. We're all that pitch perfect. So, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Yes, Twin Towers, all that kind of stuff. 2001, as in that particular year, that's what occurred. I don't know if any conspirators are amongst us that want to draw connections. Feel free. You're welcome to. You might get laughed at. But what we can talk about, or I think is much more pertinent, is the movie itself and what it is, what it represents. And as much as Kubrick's incorporated quite some depth into the story, which a lot of people find boring because it's just surface level propaganda, if you want to take it as what it is, just a boring space movie. Now, there is a lot more to it. And if you do want to know more intricacies about specifically 2001, just go and watch Rob Ager, who takes apart the multiple levels of the movie that Kubrick created and the genius of Kubrick in his movie making. Now, Rob Ager does a great job of that. That is not something I'm going to attempt here either. All we're really going to talk about is the need for the movie because of what it represents. It's space propaganda to create the illusion that we can do all the things that exist in the movie. That is to say, travel around balls in a sky vacuum with orbital motion and presumed distances to bodies that we can do travel to. So all of that in the movie is precisely what we brace against by debunking it. When we say you can't have gas pressure without a container, if the sky was a vacuum, as is asserted in the propaganda that you've been brought up with to believe that is the case, like 2001 or Star Wars, even though it's a lot more fictional in nature, whimsical if you want. The nature of 2001 is there for one purpose. If it's government funded and government approved, which it is, it's there to propagandize the masses into believing that there's a sky vacuum that you can travel to. Now, prior to all of the propaganda that NASA incorporate, but even before NASA, when you've got heliocentric propaganda, that's come along. Oops, bashing my mic. That's come along. Stop being so animated with my hands while I'm talking. That's come along at a time when the maps show the way the world as it works. You know, it came upon Quantum Race's show yesterday, or the day before yesterday, rather, when he was talking about third world countries. You're like, now they don't call them third world countries anymore. They might still be noted that way on some old maps, but they're called developing countries now. Well, why? Well, because that old way of describing the discovery of new worlds would be ascribable in that context when you call it a third world country. Because back in the day, we used to travel out towards space. And in some of the old books that 10th Man has gone through, it's still described that way, going back not more than 100 years. They describe space as the area of unknown territory, potentially, beyond the horizon. And as they've travelled into space, they've discovered what they put on the maps, the new worlds. Now that changes, and obviously to bolster it, we have the propaganda that we're discussing today with 2001: A Space Odyssey. The need to take that which has been shown and demonstrated in history, in terms of the discovery of new worlds, very literally, to taking those new worlds to a place you can't go. A farcical place when you think about it, because it's an empty area above your head we see as the sky or the stars at night. Well, that empty area of twinkling lights is now the land that we can potentially travel to. Well, that's all achieved through things like 2001. There's my hopefully substantial enough preamble to keep you all juicy and interested in discussing this. Hello, by the way, Adam.
Afternoon.
Do
It's
you have a
also
thumbnail?
Well, it's actually,
pre-warning, is it not,
Yeah.
about AI, which you think back to when that was made, it's quite spooky that it's predicting what we're fearing.
Adam, with his advanced intellect, taking this to where I thought we would be ending the discussion. Very
Sorry.
good, very good. Like minds and all that. I like it. Yeah. I mean, we can start there. I don't mind. Yeah. Again, if you want to get more information on this, go to Rob Ager's video and just look at how he breaks it down. Because if I say anything now that even infers that I know about this stuff in terms of the layers of Kubrick's genius, it's all come from Rob Ager originally. So I may as well just disclaim that in terms of the letters are one on from IBM, HAL. You know, it's his nod to IBM and their stranglehold over the people with their technology. And it is a slight poke at that when you see the subtlety of what he does and how he shuts down. There's a certain song that gets played as well as he's pulling all the cards out, which is linked in some way to one of the first computers. I forget the connection. Again, refers back to Rob Ager for more detailed information. But Adam, go ahead.
Well, other than the space, the other thing that I remember of that film, I've only seen it a couple of times, is again the pre-programming that it was an infinite regression fallacy, isn't it? But ultimately, they're reinforcing evolution, as in evolutionary upgraded by aliens.
Correct. Star Child demonstrates that at the end, correct.
It's loaded, actually, isn't it? With things you must believe.
I mean, there's a bit of a spoiler if you do go and see Rob Ager's interpretation, and it is originally his. If anybody else claims it, they're lying. Which is to say that the monolith, by his interpretation, is the screen. Now, if you imagine what the dimensions of the monolith are and then turn it 90 degrees, what you're looking at is the screen. And there's even a scene right at the end which sort of matches up with the when he's in a spacesuit, but he's seeing himself as old. There's a point where he reaches out towards the monolith, and in the framing of Kubrick's genius, he touches the edge of the cinema screen. If you were sat at the cinema watching that, the way it would present to you is he's literally, as it cuts from him reaching towards the monolith, he touches the edge of the screen. Very clever stuff. If you've never noticed it, you will now. Again, Rob Ager, not me. But just genius. This is Kubrick. We've got to get away from Kubrick and get onto the propaganda, Adam. AI is definitely tied to that, though. How IBM, the current raft of artificial intelligence that we have, this was his warning towards that, was what you said, Adam. That is definitely on topic because it's, that's tied to the propaganda, and Kubrick's trying to expose it. I don't necessarily feel that he was trying to expose anything about space beyond his errors of cinematography that were intentional. Things like the space station spinning one way in one frame, and then he cuts to a different angle, but it's literally rotating in the complete opposite direction. Those sorts of errors are way, way, way a bit above and beyond what Kubrick is capable of, therefore can only be interpreted as intentional errors that he's put in there. So then you start questioning why. Well, when we're in a day and age when we've got lots of people who look at space footage from NASA and point out continuity errors like that, it does kind of lend itself to, is that a nod to look for the continuity errors? Because he's highlighting how he's got them in there clearly intentional, because he's just too good a filmmaker to not get that right. Do you know what I mean? Having a space station physically spin the other way means he's spun the model the other way and then cut to a different angle. That took effort to have the continuity error. Anyway, I digress, Adam. HAL, IBM, artificial intelligence, space propaganda. That's what we want to focus on here.
It's in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, isn't it, this film?
Yeah.
And that's the thing I look on when I'm thinking about artificial intelligence. You're coming out of a time where it's Robbie the robot and stuff like that. So for him to presenting this in basically what we are using, it makes you wonder what level of technology they had at that point. Because you're looking at Kubrick, and he's a spoiler alert, isn't he? Whether that's for the establishment or whatever, it's just making you accept these things. Some will come to fruition, like AI. Some are just there to reinforce the belief, like space travel. But it's just interesting that, to me, that AI is in there in such a way that it matches the fears we have, 40 years later.
Yeah, and starting around the time of the date of the movie, starting around 2001 would be when that sort of technology was starting to become prevalent. In other words, it matches his timeline perfectly. But again, it's a government propaganda movie to all intents and purposes. So some of those plots and narratives aren't necessarily Kubrick's doing. They want that in there, and they would want it in there for the reasons that, as you've just described, is now the case. People are scared of AI. Well, why is that useful? Why would you want people scared of anything? Well, because it's the best technique to keep people under control. Fear. It might be the case that had it not been for things like Kubrick and HAL, we'd be indifferent to the AI, which, to be perfectly frank, again, Rob Ager has this attitude. I'm just thinking of attitudes that he has because he's on my mind, obviously talking about 2001 analysis. But he's got a similar attitude towards AI. It's like, what have you got to be fearful of? This jumped up search engine? You're kidding me? It's only ever garbage in, garbage out. That will never change. So to fear that it's going to become sentient, you're like, oh God, get over yourself. But we've all been programmed and brainwashed to believe that we should fear it. Again, why? Useful. Keep us under control.
Right, when we have a much more realistic threat to worry about, and that is the average intelligence of politicians.
Yeah, people.
They could actually do it.
Yeah, exactly. You should be more concerned with the psychopathy of the people in charge. But we know there's various different things, including this, that keep us well and truly distracted from from the other people right next to us that there's a good chance of keeping you under control. But they're just a dude standing next to you when you actually boil it down. And you were talking about this yesterday, Arwen, when you said about the Wizard of Oz and the dog pulling back the curtain. Well, metaphorically, when you're shoulder to shoulder with Oz, he's just a guy, isn't he? That's what half the fear-based mind control is down to little dick men that are scared of losing control. It's pathetic when you actually boil it down. I shouldn't smile about this. Oh, why am I laughing? I don't know why. It's because I look at the world in that way. When I see people doing the do and conforming, and I used to 10 years ago get a bit upset about it. But now I don't. I just go, oh my God, the normies are sad. There's nothing you can do about it as far as I'm concerned. So you just resign yourself to it. And if you can't laugh, you'd cry. You know what I mean? For society. That said, a lot of my empathy in this particular subject's been washed away over the years, more specifically towards people who come and argue for a globe. You're arguing for your own servitude. You're arguing for your own fear-based mind control. And I just, in many ways, see that as pathetic. I shouldn't say it. This is the majority of the Western world. No wonder people don't want to... blame YouTube for the unsubscribing people that may not like what they hear when they get here. The growth of the channel is all that matters, and we're growing. What's up, hun? You off?
Well, look, intellectual slavery is a form of weakness. It's not necessarily pathetic because it might just be too complicated for you to figure it out, or you can't handle it. But it's certainly a sign of weakness because the not being able to handle it is also like you don't wanna, right? The people, even the ones that aren't super smart, they still have those choices to break through that impulse from the inside, like, no, and actually like take an honest look and then make an honest comparison, right? But because they are too weak to do that, to actually be honestly curious and size things up honestly, that's what keeps them weak. So it's sort of a cowardice thing in a way. But I mean, when you're just intellectually way in over your head, that makes it all even harder.
Plus, they brainwash us from birth, so it's you know the old adage that it's easier to con someone than convince them they've been conned. Well, if you've been conned from birth, then that old adage applies the moment you're in society with respect to globe, Earth, and space.
Right, and if you're continually being surrounded by it as well, then you get like the whole group effect too. You don't want to be the one person out, because that is what it will feel like at first.
The other thing to highlight in terms of the quality, because Adam was pointing out that the predictive programming element of Kubrick showing you what space travel is going to be in 2001 is also nicely taken apart by Dilly Gill, who occasionally gets a mention on this show. Nearly 90 people watching. Please share the show. Smash that share button. Very warm welcome if you've just joined us on show 2001.
That thing is, I think to people in the 60s and 70s, that's what was expected. Remember, we've just landed on the moon. Yeah. So this level of progression is exactly what is expected. It's not really fantasy, this, is it? This is a tomorrow's world sort of shot to the public. Certainly when I was a kid, this is what you're expecting. It. By the time I was 50, which I am now, we should have had flying cars. We were promised them, and do you know what I mean? This is not a fanciful thing. It's a little of a warning tale, but isn't it? But these are the things. This is what I say the mainstream tomorrow's world's telling you. This is what the world will be like by 2001.
A hoverboard, at least, flying cars, but at least a hoverboard. I mean, come on.
No, the Jetsons promised us flying cars, and that's the most disappointing thing.
I wish you guys would veer away from flying cars, because we're supposed to be flying around in a sky vacuum as far as 2001 is concerned. That notion is what's supposed to be commonplace. Now, it's only commonplace in the mind's eye of the public now. And here we are, telling them it ain't true. Getting shut down by
it's easy.
Please share the show.
It's easy to do. All you have to do is overcome the eccentricity of Earth.
Well, at least the one Luke Skywalker was driving in Return of the Jedi, right? And Endor, those were cool.
Sure. But with a propaganda movie like 2001, the mundane aspect of it is also drawn from NASA's boring missions that they put in front of the public. So I was just referencing Dilly Gill, who points out that Hollywood, in this case Kubrick's movie, aren't on the cutting edge of cinematography, as much as it may seem the case to the public. NASA are on the cutting edge of cinematography. They're the ones with the best lenses and the best equipment and the best cameras and the best editing studios, the best stages, and the most cutting edge tech. They're on the cutting edge, and Hollywood are behind them. There's a reason.
You know,
Go on.
well, that's interesting though, because you know it's real because it looks so fake. How long are they going to be able to stand behind that as a defense then?
Not for much longer. I don't know. I just think that the technology is the problem now. You know, people can see through the nonsense. I was about to reference Gravity in terms of people have seen the ISS and what they do and spin on high wire. And then Gravity comes out once Hollywood catches up with that tech from 10 years ago that NASA were using. Now, don't get me wrong, they were doing boring stuff like bubbles and in CGI and spinning around in their harnesses. But when you see Sandra Bullock doing exactly the same thing with a behind-the-scenes expose of how they do it by removing the ceilings, you only got to go and put two and two together. And if you can't, go and watch Dilly Gill do it for you. You know, he shows them removing the ceilings in post-production, or adding the ceilings in post-production and giving you a live view that's without the ceiling incorporated on the very thin high wire that they spin around on and do their CGI magic tricks on a monitor from some stage.
But they can do that live. They can remove aspects of the video live. If it's a certain color or it's in a certain position, they can do that live.
Yeah.
You know, it's like green screen technology. That's pretty old as far as that goes.
Which is what NASA lean on. So this is, again, credit to Dilly Gill, who points out that in terms of the action, what's going on camera, what are they filming, that's boring. They play, as he puts it, their cards very close to their chest. They're not chasing down aliens. No, they're eating a microwave dinner. They're not battling with lightsabers. They're climbing up to the top to get something out of a cupboard. That's the level that you get shown, right? And if they go out of their way, it's elaborate, they're doing a demonstration for children. Something mundane. Now that is them leaning on the technological aspects of the cinematography to convince you of what's occurring, not the action. That's not supposed to be engaging, as The Simpsons pointed out one day, when they're cut to a rocket launch and the batteries come out of the remote, and Homer and Bart fight over getting them back in because they can't be bothered watching NASA and their boring space launch, with a mathematician, a statistician, and another mathematician going off into space, prior to Homer going into space in that particular episode. But that particular boring aspect of NASA is intentional. You're only being sold on what the setting is, and that's all done with the cinematography.
That's right. It's futurist. It's futurist. So it's like they're trying to make you consider what would this be like if my life was in this scenario. So they have to like show you something really boring because, well, people's lives can be really boring, and then you'll be like, oh, yeah, I do that too. I could be doing that in space. That's kind of what they're going for, right? Smooth you into it.
Well, they just want you to have it in your mind's eye. That's all it is. Space only exists in the mind's eye of the person that fantasizes about it. Now, they don't appreciate that it's a fantasy. At a base level, they might appreciate they've never been there. But we can go there would be their response. The royal we has been to space, therefore it's real. It's like, no, but it violates the second law of thermodynamics. If the sky was a vacuum, we'd all be dead. We'd have no gas to breathe. Gas expands to fill the space. That's how it behaves. The sky's not a vacuum. You know, now if they're going to fight their cognitive biases, they're going to go into what gravity can or cannot do as a non-force that maybe you can think of as a force.
Right. And in that, when they're talking about gravity, they're going to refer to eccentricity of things leaving Earth's gravitational field, right?
What, with respect to a flat plane in terms of the mathematical descriptions?
Yeah, they're going to have to utilize a horizontal to give it a eccentricity value.
But the public doesn't know that. They've only taken the steps of reification. The flat plane that's used to derive orbit is, woohoo, we're over 100 viewers, 103. Thank you to all of you shared. Welcome if you've just got here. Please share the show. Yeah, they don't know that. They just have the reification. They have the fantasy, which is reinforced constantly by NASA, the only ones we can actually peg as liars, and the generalized movies and sci-fi and space stuff that you get in Fantasyland. They don't know that you're not suspending disbelief. You are suspending disbelief when you watch NASA, and, you know, you're happy to accept the suspension of disbelief when you go and watch a Hollywood movie. The two are the same, but you don't realise that. You think one's real. Boring one.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to take away from the work they've done. They've really done a job on the public, you know. But even when the boring parts, as you was talking about, when they're talking about like their parabolic trajectories and things like that, they're never using a globe for that, you know.
Do you not think that's why you can't get hold of telemetry data? That it was better to look incompetent than have to show that you're working with a flat plane when you calculate out the distances and the journey mathematically. Like, hold on a second. The trajectory data would expose the flat plane that's used in the maths. So better to look incompetent in that regard. So, we lost it.
Possibly. I mean, I don't know, but to me, that telemetry data would be damnable from our position.
Yeah, well, it would prove a flat plane. You see, it would be there in the maths. I mean, there isn't any telemetry. Nobody's ever put pen to paper to make telemetry data to travel to the moon. It's utterly absurd. It's never existed because you can't do it. There is no journey from a flat plane derivation in a fantasy of a mathematics of an orbit to get to the moon. Now, the people who are going to infer that they've come up with the telemetry, that's silly. So my estimation would be there wasn't ever any telemetry. There's only ever the fraud. People think about the fraud and how the fraud's been portrayed. And they travelled to the moon, so they built the rocket and all the bits that they know about, and then they fill in the pieces. One of the bits is telemetry data. So they just lost it. It's like, you're just taking the narrative. What makes you think anybody ever put pen to paper to create this telemetry data when you know how absurd it is to infer that you can take measurements off a flat plane, give angular representation and scale through Kepler, and then infer that by reification you can travel out into an orbit scaled by Huygens?
But
you wouldn't even put pen to paper. So it doesn't exist. We've never had telemetry data. No one's doing that. It's silly.
What about the fuel? The amount of fuel?
What about it? Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, we know we went to the moon because we know how much fuel we used.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's an affirming the consequence.
They calculated it.
It's just
if they calculate it, they have to have done it, right?
Exactly.
They know how to calculate how much they did.
If we can travel to the moon, then we will use X amount of fuel. We used X amount of fuel, therefore we travel to the moon. It's just your average standard run-of-the-mill affirming the consequent.
No, it's not affirming the consequent because we calculated the travel to the moon using a flat plane. Therefore, if we went to the moon, we live on a globe. Or that happened. You know,
which is why I'm suggesting there would never be any telemetry data created in the first instance. Because as soon as you start putting pen to paper and seeing where the angles are coming from, you appreciate the absurdity of the journey that you're calculating. And you just stop. Like I say, I don't think there ever was any telemetry data. There wasn't a journey to the moon, that's for sure. So why would there be any telemetry data? All there is the perpetration of the fraud that is a necessity to convince the public that they went to the moon. Now, we know that's the case. So when you think in those terms, you go, well, if I was going to claim I was traveling to Narnia, let's just put it in this context, right? Now, I've got to not only suggest in the mind's eye of the person I'm convincing that Narnia is real, that may take XYZ steps. But I've also got to convince them that the journey took place through the wardrobe. So I've got to give them some convincers, some warm coats, some snow at the back of a wardrobe, things like that. I've got to give them some convincers, and once that's been established, when they start asking further questions about, well, what about the temperature? What about the gas lamp you described and how it's got gas fed to it non-stop without any plumbing? How do all these things work? You start getting into the extension of the lie, which is obviously going to be that little bit more flimsy. But people then start taking the extension of the lie, in this case telemetry, and going, well, what happened to it? What happened to what? The extension of the lie that's a little bit flimsy? You're going to start going round the Wrekin looking for the telemetry data they lost, or asking why they lost it. Like, they never went. Once you know that, you're like, I'm wasting my breath on liars, aren't I?
Maybe that was the painful process, Nathan, that they never had any telemetry data. That's the painful process.
Yeah, you did. It's on screen now.
What, be inspired?
No, that bit. The lady here. So this is apparently the telemetry data that was handwritten, isn't it?
I don't know if that photo is of anything. She looks like she's just holding a load of pizzas.
Could be, couldn't it? Telephone directories. Seeing how high she can stack them. But apparently that's what's written out. That she convinced a lot. So don't say there's no telemetry data. There she is with it all written out by hand, so they could go safely to the moon.
Exactly. We had the telemetry data. Is much better when you've got a picture like this than, well, obviously we can't calculate how to travel based on orbits. They've been derived from a flat plane. We aren't going to be spinning around it in an orbital motion when we turn that flat plane extremity at the equator, measured off a flat plane, into a sphere and put things in motion around it. That was only done so that we could figure out when Easter was. Why the hell would we be using that to derive a journey? It's absurd. Well, the public needs to think we've taken this journey. Give me a photo of a tart holding a load of boxes and we'll say that we've got the telemetry data. As opposed to, I'll get right on it. Where's my calculator? No one's going to work out telemetry data. There was no telemetry data. There was no journey. How could there be telemetry data? It's utterly absurd. What else we got on 2001? Space and its oddness.
Picture on screen. I just wonder, like I say, maybe it's predictive programming, etc., but Reflector was just talking. I'm just looking at this picture, and then I thought about the ISS and the Chinese ISS, and how much better Kubrick has tried to deal with the claimed implications of what space is, what it's got, what it's not got. So he sticks a giant spinning wheel so that you can have artificial gravity based on centripetal acceleration. That's the cheap way of not having to do everything floating in free fall, isn't it? But we're now told that for things like the ISS, they don't have this. The living decks aren't put on the outside to attain a false gravity. They're stuck on the inside, but we're also now told, as opposed to Kubrick, where that's weightless up there, these guys aren't weightless. They're in free fall. So there's been a slight change, I think, from 2001 in the rhetoric of what's going off up there. They've had to rethink it, shuffle it, or change Kubrick's slight idea, where this is totally the only way of producing gravity is the rotation. And here we've actually got 8.3 or something gravity, but it's negated by us constantly falling.
Yeah. I mean, the rhetoric has changed within the period of time between 2001 and now. There's been subtle changes, and the changes come from the people. You know, they're the ones who mould the rhetoric. So as much as we might poke fun at convicted, violent, criminal woman beater fight the flat earth, Craig McNeil, when he talks about gravity creating an emergent force of gravity, that type of level of doublespeak, perfectly acceptable within the fantasy realms of heliocentrism, as long as people will swallow it. In other words, that's how the rhetoric comes to pass. So when we say, well, why are we deceived? How have we been deceived? Who deceived us? Well, we all did. You know, if you look at someone like Andrew Thomas Young, he's just some guy that's overcoming his own cognitive dissonance with an explanation with refraction, taken from a flat plane, of course, like everything is. But when you get those types of people and go, well, is he the big bad wolf? No, it's just a dude with cognitive dissonance. Something needs explaining, so he's explained it and stuck it on the internet. You could say the same about Mick West. But those are just people. They're just guys. We started this off by saying, well, what's the reason for the control structures? Well, because the guy next to you's got a little penis. That's why. And he's really terrified that he's going to lose control of all the people. So he tries to emphasize his control through making things seem bigger and badder and worse, making things seem scary. Then you feel that you need that man with a little penis. Depend on him. Now, if he's already duped you and someone tries to turn around and say, no, the man with the little penis has duped you, you'll say, nah, no way I'm getting duped. It's really hard to convince somebody that they've been duped. So they'll brace against it. And in so doing, they come up with new rhetoric on behalf of man with little penis. So the self-perpetuating nature of heliocentrism comes from the fact that, as I've said in other shows, we have a mobile above our crib with all the planets on it. So we're all indoctrinated from birth, basically duped from birth. The moment you start getting schooled in anything, you're getting told about heliocentrism, all the cartoons revolve around it. So you're duped immediately, and you're on the back foot from the moment you start learning about the world and how it isn't, to the benefit of people who want to keep you under control with fear.
Spaceballs. Shut up. It's the Spaceballs. But you're right, yeah. Just from birth, you're given a model on how to view those lights in the sky, right? Before it's even given a context. It's just like, look, this is what you're thinking about. This is what you're looking at. And yeah, you're going to be doing the rest of your life without knowing it.
Because the basics,
Physicality assumption bias.
the basics are understandable by your average layman as well, so they can pass it on to their kid in its basic form and seem smart. So your average 80 IQ numpty tells their kid that they're on a rotating surface and we're moving around the sun. And those basics, which you've been schooled in, can be passed on, and, you know, the kid's looking up to their amazing, intelligent daddy who's explained something complicated that they didn't first appreciate, that didn't match up with how they saw the world, and good job dad's here to tell me, or mom.
Did that open a door
hold
for all
on.
the space movies?
But that's not smart. Sorry, Neil. It's not smart. That's educated. It's a big difference. Right?
Well, no, hold on a sec, because there's that when you run into why would they lie, right? It works under the assumption that everyone has lied to them, you know, that everyone has some kind of foul intent behind the information that they've given them and telling it to them wrongly. And the thing is, that's the automatic place to go to for someone in cognitive dissonance, because the idea that those people telling them stuff were no more enlightened than you were when they told you is terrifying.
Well, maybe that could fly back then, but it ain't going to fly now. With all the information out now,
Yeah, but
can't hide behind that anymore.
Well, it's not the information, it's your own fear. So you still suffer from this when you look for affirmation from society, Neil. How long will it be before everyone else aligns with your ideas?
What the heck are you talking? You know, I'm out of here again.
What are you talking about?
No, don't go,
You
Neil.
better not.
But I mean, for the atheist ball believer, like facing that all this trust, they know better. Well, and then you figure out, no, they don't know better. Then you have a weird sensation of like, what have I been trusting in then? And that can also be scary. Like, did I actually trust in God all along? Or did I trust in the devil? Like, it can really screw with you. Like when that cognitive dissonance snaps you out of that worldview of like, oh yeah, no, we got it all figured out. I can trust my fellow humans above
and
me.
the society having it all figured out for the dumber people of society, it's one of those few things that they can retain as, well, I know this, which makes me smart, when they're not. And so they'll brace against it when you try and correct something, because it's something so fundamental to their life and existence since they've been aware of anything. They've been aware of Earth being a sphere and you being in space with them. So they'll brace against it because, again, it would make them feel stupid to suddenly not know that which was so fundamental to their life and existence, up until the point that you say, well, that's actually not the case. So they'll get angry quickly.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, Chocolate. 115 people watching.
Morning.
Another warm welcome. And for everybody who's just joined us, thank you very much for coming. You've only come because somebody else has smashed that share button and you've clicked it, because we've definitely not got 115 people watching thanks to YouTube algorithmic love. Please share the show if you've just got here. We're very warm welcome to you all.
So Nathan, you're saying that it's pride, like guys like Fight the Flat Earth and all these other people. You're telling me that pride is holding them back from them recognizing reality?
Yeah, it's a financial investment, but without the money. I mean, it sometimes has money if you've been educated in it. But what I mean is you've invested your time and effort into learning something and understanding something and being able to disseminate it. For someone to come along and say everything you've learned's not correct.
Right.
You go, well,
and
I've got investment in that, so I'm going to fight for it.
And fear. There's fear in there with that pride.
Fear of what?
That's that pride of how did you figure this out and I didn't? How are you the one telling me this? Right? I don't really know why that happens that way, but I've seen it in my face. It's like, why? Who are you? Tell me what's going on. I'm just relating facts to you, bro. Nah. Because I would have known, right? It's always that ego of I would have known already. There's no reason for you to be telling me it's flat or I'm not on a ball. How did you figure that out and I didn't?
But you also get educated in, if someone's telling you it's flat, they're stupid. Just remember, if someone tells you it's flat, they're stupid. Go straight to that if they're ever correcting you. What's that? Earth's flat. You're stupid. Immediately ignore everything you've got to say.
Well, in The Emperor's New Clothes, what would have actually happened probably with that kid yelling that the emperor's naked, the parents would have probably turned to them real quick and said, be quiet. Don't say that. Out of fear.
Yep. Correct.
Because fear has a huge part of control. Pride may keep them from comprehending, but fear keeps them in line.
Well, the bit of incomprehension might come in the form of not don't say that, implying that they understand what's going on, but moreover, he's too young to understand the magical clothes. Just ignore him, he's too young, he just doesn't get it yet. When he's a bit older, he'll understand the magical clothes that he's wearing and how the threads are invisible, but he just doesn't get that yet. We'll explain it to him later. Bless you, little sod. On your way.
Didn't Conspiracy Cats voice that? Right? His fear?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
What is all true?
Well, there's the question everything aspect that comes into play when you realise you've been lied to on this particular front. If they can lie to you about the nature of the very ground you're standing on, what else can they lie to you about, was his sentiment. Well, yeah, you have to consider that, don't you? But denial of that obvious and observable flat plane they've lied to you about when they said it was a globe, that denial can keep you from having to contemplate the fact that you might have been lied to about other things you've taken as read. That was his attitude, basically, yes.
And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum where people are like, well, they've lied to me about the ground and they call themselves science. So everything that has to deal with science must be a lie.
Yeah. Judge Dredd said he went through the court process when he threw that person in jail and said they were guilty without any trial. So let's hang the court process. No, Judge
Gearin.
Judge Dredd didn't go through the court process. We shouldn't attack the court process. Yeah, but when he said, I am the law, someone afterwards said, so you went through the court process? And he said yes. So let's get the court process and destroy it, because that's what's causing this problem when Judge Dredd says, I am the law. No, they didn't do science. Yeah, but when we asked them, they said that they were doing science. So let's get science and call it scientism because it's evil. No, they didn't have any. They were just lying. That doesn't mean you chase after science. It means you realise when men lie.
Well, alternatively, they could just pick up that same sword and start using it themselves after decrying it, which would be silly, but
well, that's what happens, isn't it, with ether? You're implying ether. Well, yeah, when I got shut down by the majority of the, let's call them mainstream flat earthers, it would seem here to be intentionally ridiculed by opponents set up to ridicule them. I don't know. Did anybody see the debacle of Flatoberfest, where there's a repeat of the who's that con artist that conned a load of people with Bitcoin recently? Logan Paul, right? He did what someone else did at the most recent Flatoberfest. Just went in and said, yeah, I'm blagging, I'm a flat earther. I got $1,000 here if anyone can show it's flat. And he got kicked out. You're like, this has all happened before. What's going on? It's just like going through the motions. If nothing else, the psychopathic nature of the ruling structure means that you see history repeating itself. Narcissists love to recycle. So you see the same things happening. Go on.
He had $1,000 and all he wanted was an angle measurement.
Yeah, man. I thought that's what I thought. I was like, if I was there, I'd have that $1,000 off him.
Wait, so you're saying this is not the same incident where he made the video? It's different?
We have people in our community that seem to be there to, as John just put it, the start of this conversation was, you could pick up that sword. What sword? The sword of suggesting that you've got science when you haven't. If I am to convince my audience that there is a, let's not say ether, let's say Narnia, just to make it clear what we're talking about. If I say that what we actually exist in is, as we all understand as flat earthers, a flat realm, okay? But that flat realm, in and of itself, exists within the realm of Narnia. You're following along so far. What we all know, let's say it's the azimuthal equidistant projection of a globe, of a flat plane. Well, that is the world that we know, but that exists in Narnia. Therefore, what we actually exist in is Narnia. Now, there are various different parts of Narnia that you can travel to through, I don't know, let's say fourth dimensional wormholes that happen to be attached to wardrobes. Now, if I'm going to convince you of this, which I'm going to be putting my life on the line to say I haven't done if you're in the audience thus far, it's just pepper it with a little bit of what you, the audience, know to be absolute stone cold validity for what I'm saying. Science has shown that we exist within a realm known as Narnia. The Narnia aspect exists around the earth we dwell in. I mean, you could call it the counter space of the realm that we live in, known as Narnia. This has been scientifically validated by, I don't know, the Michelson-Morley experiment. You see how what I'm now bullshitting about has become science really quickly? You're all nodding along now going, really? Narnia realm, you say? Michelson-Morley experiment, you say? Science proven, you say? No, I'm a total charlatan. Maybe go after science, because I've just implied that there's an experiment offering validity to Narnia realms. I mean, it is science after all. No, I'm a charlatan in this instance, aren't I? This context. That doesn't mean I am the law, go after the juries that aren't in existence. There wasn't a method, there wasn't science. I just said there was. See how that works? Now take Narnia out and replace it with ether, and suddenly you'll get the idea of what's going on when John says people pick up that sword of science, blagging that they've got proof of things when it hasn't. Yeah, that happens in Flat Earth too. By charlatans and con artists that have seen a magic trick that they quite like and gone, I could do that. I can say science. Wow, check it out. Everyone believes me when I talk about counter space and dielectric incoherent acceleration. I mean, it's amazing how useful that is for a ball with a downward bias also. But that's a different story for a different day. We're talking about 2001 after all.
Especially when you say I believe in science.
Contradiction in terms.
Correct.
What you got up, Adam? Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
I was going to say, interestingly enough, 2001: A Space Odyssey is classified as science fiction.
Absolutely. When, what's the guy who was Kirk? I can't remember the guy's name. Owen's a fan. What's his name?
William Shatner.
William Shatner. I was thinking Bill, what's his name? Right, William Shatner was asked, what's the difference between science fiction and science? And his answer was nothing. There is no difference. What he should have said, or what would be strictly accurate, would be a rephrasing of the question. What is the difference between pseudo-science pretender bullshit claims of heliocentrism and science fiction? Nothing. There is no difference between science fiction and lies about science about space. They're the same thing. That would be accurate. What's the difference between science fiction, that would be fictional non-adherence to a scientific method, and science, well, they're so far removed it's untrue. Science fiction is movie making. Science is the adherence to the scientific method to elucidate the cause of an effect when studying a phenomenon in nature based on a hypothesis. That's a scientific prediction actualized by experiment to then go on to form theory. That would be science. It's so far devoid from science fiction, it's untrue. But according to Bill, they're the same. Because what has actually happened is science has been hijacked by liars who lie about space. Therefore, science fiction about space is the same as pseudoscience about space. Because there's been no scientific method.
I was going to say about 30 years is the difference.
Yeah, when they catch up with the cinematography, it's about the same. That's right. Go on, Adam.
This is science fiction on screen, right? There wasn't a zero gravity toilet. Kubrick's realised we've got a problem. How do you take a shit in space? Yeah, look at his thoughts. I can pull it up. It's a detailed thing of how to get in there, what to do. It's a sonovac. It sucks it out. It does all these different. Yeah, this then goes into play by NASA. Except, of course, Kubrick's imagination to solve the problem is a lot more practical and solves the problem. To do it is disgusting. So for NASA to do it, they kind of do a half-arse. Go and look at the NASA toilets. But this is a good example of how science fiction becomes supposed science fact. Somebody invents it in a film, and then you'll see it appear later.
Right. For me,
excuse me, correction.
Red Dwarf.
That would be the NASA toilet.
Sorry, chocolate. Go ahead.
/ coffee machine.
My bad, chocolate. Rumpus, all of that. Go ahead one more time.
Sorry. I said that, just a correction. That would be the NASA toilet / coffee machine. Coffee maker. Thank you.
That's what you're drinking, chocolate. That's what you're drinking, isn't it?
I saw that in Red Dwarf.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's now been done by NASA. That same thing. That's what I'm saying. It's about 30 years. You'll see it in a science fiction book, and eventually it'll pop up in mainstream space exploration. Just the simple concept of being able to travel to the moon comes from, is it Jules Verne? It's the first to imagineer that the moon is a place to go. Yeah, he's the one that builds rockets to space. Yeah, it's everything you've ever seen that's portrayed as space fact 30, 40, 50 years before has been imagineered by some science fiction author.
Speaking of the moon, last night, I'm telling you, it was so close. I felt like I could have reached down and touched it. Amazing.
And a Danish pastry to your house meal. And then you turned up yesterday. So I was going to do that today after the funeral. I thought I'll collar him and I'll Uber something round to his house and say, "Oi, stop ignoring us."
I said, freaking got me, man. Now I got to come in. That was 2000 anyway. There's some various reasons. I'll get into it at another time, but.
Yeah, Adam was like, guys, shut up. Quit making this stuff up. We don't know what's going on. And then he had to do that just to shut us up.
Yeah, so when I read Brian's thing, Brian said the Virgin George was going to contact the Alabama police. I'm like, don't ever contact police looking for me.
Welfare check was thrown around. We was worried.
So this is FED 2001.
A space odyssey.
Second law of thermodynamics odyssey.
I've only seen half of that movie. I guess they want you to swallow the evolution method in that as well. I mean, that's the same mind that we're going against today. It's not just the natural law violating.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What came out first? What came out first? Planet of the Apes or Space Odyssey?
I would assume maybe Planet of the Apes.
Is it sad that I've never seen that movie, 2001 Space Odyssey? Even as a flat earther for fucking 7 years, I still haven't seen that nonsense.
Oh, you never seen it?
Dude, the opening scene is
Go ahead.
Well, you know, the whole 2001 A Space Odyssey, where the last scene where he's reaching out and grabbing the side of the screen, you know, the ye shall be as gods lie. That's evolution, because what are you evolving into? Whatever evolution is, you know, what's the end result? What's going to happen at the end of this process, right? I think that's the original lie, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the deception that Satan threw at Adam and Eve. You will be like God.
0 drop frames in that live stream. Like literally the very, very bare minimum that I would want to set the encoder to, and the bare minimum bitrate that I'd want. It worked. No drop frames. So that'll be it then. Excellent. I've been fighting against a memory bottleneck, so without boring the pants off here, to get the memory to be stable, I've had to turn the speed right down, which means that it starts to bottleneck other things that are memory dependent. So you then have to turn them down. So that's what I'm doing. It's a lot easier now because it's only one thing I'm asking it to do. I'm only asking it to live stream encode, whereas previously when I first got the computer I wanted it to do both. I wanted it to be able to encode the live stream and record. It just constantly overloaded. Because now it just overloads a little bit at the beginning of the stream when you first turn it on, but I've set the settings far lower than they should be, but it doesn't trip the overload thing and start dropping frames, because if it does that, it just doesn't seem to want to recover. But that live stream went perfectly. I haven't checked the quality of it. I already know it won't be quite as good as I would hoped.
Don't put the groinkies on it. You were reviewing that video with Caleb, right? And Fight the Tight Shirt.
Right, did you want to change the subject from my computer? People have got needs. They need to know about this, Neil.
Yes, no, maybe so.
Yes, we did a Caleb versus convicted violent criminal woman beater fight the flat earth. Craig McNeil, yes. What about it? Thank you, Neil. That was just wonderful. I'm really glad we got your input on that.
That's classic.
I thought there were more.
Nathan, I think you're wasting your time with all this fancy technology, man. I think you should just go back to the computer technology that we had that got us to the moon, like the Apollo stuff. Like,
All
let's
right.
go with that. I mean,
I should just
got
try
us to the moon. I mean,
with the
shit.
processing power of a Nintendo, I should be able to do what I'm doing. Really, is what you're saying?
Yeah, more like a ColecoVision. Not even Nintendo yet.
A ZX86.
Your average pocket calculator.
That's right, Neil. Probably on Thursday, I would expect.
Imagine going back
Did you
in
hear
time,
my
right?
question?
Probably on Thursday. Yes,
No.
Neil. We're moving on now.
No, we can't hear you, Neil. But real quick, imagine going back in time and somebody seeing that 2001 Space Odyssey. Because even though I've never actually watched the whole thing, I've seen what it looks like, right? So take that imagery of what that movie looks like, right? Take somebody from back in the day and say, look, we're going to show you an actual moon landing, right? And you bring them back to the future. And what do you show them? You show them the Indian moon landing. How impressed would they be? You're like, this is reality, buddy. What you just saw was a movie. This Indian moon landing? Yeah, this is reality, baby.
If you do want to watch it,
Wow.
just scroll past the first black screen with music, which is about 10 minutes of the introduction. Watch the scene with the monkeys at the beginning. Once it cuts to them being in space, fast forward to about 25 minutes before the end, and then watch it from there.
That's exactly how to do it, Chocolate. Take
Okay.
Nathan's advice.
Why? So watching the whole thing from start to finish is not
hell
really.
no.
You'll be sleeping.
I mean, you've got to be, if you really like boring movies, then yeah, you could do that and watch them have meetings and talk about their agendas that you cannot relate to in the slightest. I mean, you can do that.
All right, now
Gotcha.
that I'm coming in, my question was, were you reviewing Caleb and Fight the Tight Shirt the other day?
Yes.
Okay, he turns into Witsit, that kid, so it's disgusting.
Disgusting.
Yeah, he turns into Witsit.
Okay.
Like he transforms into Witsit? Like, like
You
how does
could
that?
say that. Starts talking about magnetism and all that other nonsense, comparing it with gravity, and he believes in science, though. Wouldn't it have been better to say I adhere to the scientific method?
Well, it's not really about belief. It's just about your ability to accept it, because the scientific method either proves something true or proves something false.
Right. So you adhere to it.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with belief. It's like how would you say that? A category error. Just say believe with the scientific method.
He's still on the emerging force, though, Craig.
Well, if anybody has a right to talk about a downward bias, it's the Ethereans, because the gravity guys, they don't get no down.
I kind of agree with his emerging force. That must have been what that lady felt like when Craig rolled up on her. He was an emerging force.
So are you saying the fourth dimensional Craig was actually the one that is the outrageously violent one, but the three-dimensional Craig?
Did we like talking about 2001 on show 2001?
Yeah, it was okay.
Oh, thanks for that.
I'm just amazed that Judge Dredd Craig, Whitsitt.
Right, who's Judge
Who
Dredd?
else? Who else is on the list?
Judge
Well,
Dredd?
the guy with the little dick. I was getting to the guy with the little dick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what the problem is? Small penis?
Men
Yeah.
with small dicks.
Listening to the guy. Listening to
that-
the guy with the little dick.
That doesn't necessarily mean they've got small dicks. It's just, when you talk about that type of person, that kind of. I once watched a documentary about the guy who owned Johnson & Johnson, and all his life was consumed with was worry about losing his power, losing the money for his family, things like that.
Yeah, I thought it was that was spot on, the description. I was picking up what you were putting down, Nathan. It's hilarious. It's a cool description. Judge, but when you think about it, I mean, Judge Dredd might be one of the guys, right? The guy with the little dick.
In that context, maybe.
Hey, listen, Sylvester Stallone's Italian. That's not possible.
What about Craig and Whitsitt?
Yeah, I know.
They seem to be afraid they're going to lose their power.
Well, they've
They
invested
don't
in it,
realize
haven't
that
they?
they've lost their power.
Yeah, the power
Their
being
power's gone.
It's the same power that guy that came that said he was a scientist loses by talking to us. And I really rubbed that in. Because it's like, up until we told you that you're not a scientist, you had the ability to tell anybody you encountered that you were a scientist and therefore have them believe what you told them from a position of authority. Well, once you have that taken away from you, you can't do that anymore. Well, if Craig has razzle-dazzled people by telling them what's what with science or what's what with space, then that's the fear of losing that when we come along and literally threaten that.
By the way, what was going on the other day? They were critiquing you on how you handled that guy. That was classic Nathan Oakley. Why are they trying to change it? Well, you got to be nice to him. He basically said he spent his whole life on science and was trying to demean you. I disagree totally with what they were saying.
We're supposed to be basically angelic, Neil.
No. You handled him the way he needed to be handled. Put him in his dumbass place.
The sad thing is, he was still giving it the old Black Knight at the end of it. Like, get back here and I'll tear your arms and legs off, After having his arms and legs cut off.
He actually swore and said something like, "I'll effing science the S out of you," something like that. Someone put it in a quote in the comments underneath.
That's funny. Now, there's where that fear comes in, because he said he spent his whole life in the field of science or something to that effect. So I felt a lot of fear welling up in that person.
Well, there was just a word missing. He spent his whole life in the field of pseudoscience.
Correct.
And yeah, there is a lot of fear with having that exposed.
I called him a machine operator when he came back.
Yeah, good. Don't let him forget, because he's used and abused that bullshit for a long time, and, that's what he feels gives him the right to call us a bunch of stupid idiots. And it doesn't. So, if you're going to take away their magic trick from them, you might as well rub it right in. Like, yeah, don't forget, you're not a scientist. People aren't going to lend credence to your nonsense that you lie about. Those days are over. You've met a few flat earthers, and they've took that away from you, haven't they? I know you didn't say it in those words, but that's what you're doing.
Yeah, that kind of
place right away.
You literally told him that. You literally told him next time you talk to your buddies, Don't say that thing about you being a scientist no more. We took that away from you. Literally told him that.
Yeah, I meant it. I think it's because
Talking about lab tech
yeah, lab tech guy
with protein crystallography, right?
I don't think
Not
he was
that
lying
it's
about what he did when he described it. He
no, I
seemed
don't
legit.
think so either.
Just not a scientist.
I think. Well, he thinks he's a scientist, but that's not a scientific discipline. Follow?
Yeah.
It's not that protein crystallography is pseudoscience. It's just not science to begin with.
And he didn't when
But he
he
spent
when he
his whole
detailed
life
what he
doing
did,
it.
which sounded perfectly legit. It didn't sound like pseudoscience because at no point is he claiming, experimentation. He's talking about. I mean, he might have said the word test, but even then, you can give him that and go, well, yeah, I get what you're describing in that context. It isn't a scientific test until he starts saying, well, but I am a scientist. And it's like, no. Stop. What are you doing? You're a glorified lab tech. And Adam even coined it. I remember him saying, like, there are aspects of what he does that have involved the genius of science. It's just not what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Well, he's equivocating between two words at that point. The colloquial definition of science as just knowledge and science as an empirical proof of something.
Moreover, stealing that valor so that when he says Earth's a globe, people need to be paying attention. He's a scientist after all.
Yep.
Oh crap! I forgot. I just remembered. You missed the renouncement. I did a renouncement on 24/7 last.
Oh, you got no way. Tell us all about it.
Hey, do you have the video? Do you have the audio? I want to watch it.
I think
I want to hear about it, but I want to watch it too.
It's recorded.
You repented?
It was broadcast on 24/7, right?
That's so hard to speak. Say again.
It was broadcast on 24/7, you say? So it would have been someone's captured it, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah. If you can let us know when it happened, obviously someone can backtrack it. But like with me, you very quickly lose track of where that show will be.
Yeah. Hold on.
And then we'll quiz you on what actually happened, so you can tell us about it.
24/7, 13 hours ago. What time is it? Yeah, this has to be the one. It's 24/7 Flat Earth Discord. Wow. 11/29/23 night show. That's what it's titled. I don't know why they're doing that now.
Good enough. Okay, so what happened?
I had forgotten all about it. I was just shooting the crap with Miggy, and he brought up a certain person that thought he was all that in a bag of chips, and he was being real how would you say, conniving, two-faced. And all of a sudden this guy showed up, and his name was Peter the Great. And trying to remember exactly how it went. Somebody said, well, it's more or less time to put up or shut up. So they invited me to do it. And I asked him, he thought he was all that and a bag of chips with science. So I said, okay. What's the first question? What is natural science? They gave me a generalized definition. And then I said, give me some examples of natural sciences. And so he brought up chemistry and biology. And I said, well, it's parts of chemistry and parts of biology, because chemistry works with a lot of synthetics. And biology, obviously, are just glorified, part of it, glorified collators, right? But he took offense to the synthetic. So I said, is synthetic natural? And he said yes. So it went down the tubes from there. So after I embarrassed him, 1, 2, 3, ABC, provided citations, showing that synthetic's not natural. It hit me right after I did it. I hesitated because I didn't remember it right away. And I said, wait a second. You need to renounce your faith in the Globe-Tard and your science acumen in public right now. Too funny.
Did he?
No, he refused to renounce. Shocking.
That's that pride getting to him.
But more or less, that did it. I went off on him for a little bit, and then it faded to black. Good summary.
Yeah, good summary. You need to lay down some rules.
Like if somebody comes to you, right, and shows you clearly where you're wrong in whatever field we're talking about, are you going to fight against it?
Yes, they do. You know they do.
Yeah, but I'm saying in any other field, when somebody shows you wrong, you're like, oh shoot, why is science this thing where people can't be shown that they're doing pseudoscience?
Well, yeah, but when you say field, this isn't a field. This is pretender clown fraud field. So of course they're not going to renounce. They're not going to say that they're wrong. This isn't a field.
Okay, so change the word. Somebody comes to me and shows me where I'm wrong and how I'm doing a certain air conditioning job, let's just say. They show me everything that I'm doing and it's wrong. I'm not going to fight against it.
Well, you have integrity. They don't. Simple.
Yeah, you might as well stop at the first statement. As soon as you show somebody they're wrong, some people don't like being shown that they're wrong at all. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, but if it's to your benefit, this guy showed me I'm doing something wrong, and by adhering to what he's saying, it benefits me and makes things easier.
Sometimes ego outweighs benefit.
Neil, so how do you convince the guy that that's a benefit? That now the world will ridicule him like he's just been ridiculing you? And how is that a benefit to someone? That's what I say. We're shit sellers.
Yeah, there's the catch, right?
Yeah, we're selling shit, mate.
But it's not.
It stinks like shit, doesn't it, though? Yeah? Please come and join our side and be ridiculed.
What happened to the guy in the story of Plato's cave when he went in and told him what the shadows were?
They chased him back out again.
Yeah, but okay. All right. But we're in the year 2023 going in 24. Nobody's living in caves anymore. There's got to be a way to get through where they could apprehend it and move forward. But what do I even care anymore? I said I don't care. I know it's flat and that's it. I don't need to tell anybody else. I'm done.
There you go.
They think they're right, Neil. That's what the deal is. I mean, so you got some opinions, Neil, the way you think now, right? And if somebody came to you and said they're wrong, how much do you think you're right? You'll defend those. Or
yeah, but these are not opinions. Hold on. What QE brought forward, right? Let's talk about science. That's not opinions, right? Or that's the new challenge. Show me QEs. I can't find QEs. Wait. They're saying they can't find QEs steps to the scientific method. Right? That's the new thing now.
Yeah, they can. They just have to go back to their 6th grade science textbook and actually read how they formulated the scientific method.
Yeah, I couldn't hear a word of that.
Sorry, but they just have to go back to their 6th grade science textbooks and they'll walk them through it if they're that slow.
Oh, so you're saying it's like taking a mathematician, asking Adam about counting 1 to 10?
Yeah, but it would be like me asking Adam to count to 10 and he skips over 5, 6, and 7 and then refuses to accept 5, 6, and 7 exist. That's where they're at.
I see.
Alrighty then. With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Please share the show. I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!